One mistake that everybody makes when they start getting into trying to purchase investment real estate is they think that they have to time the market. Well, let me just tell you that it's not about the timing of the market. You can't be a star football player and sit on the bench and watch the game go on and just save your energy to get in that play that's going to be on the highlight reel. You have to be on the field playing. What you need to do is set your baselines and know what those are, and then be willing to move forward when you achieve those baselines looking at transaction. Now, you talk about all these different types of loans that are out there. There's tons. We can go into the commercial world. We can go into DSCR. I'm not a big fan of ARMs if we can avoid them, just because I like to control, right? And what we just showed you with a 30-year fix is you can control what's going on for the entire 30 years. But when you're forced into a refinance scenario, you have no idea what the outcome is going to be at that time. You can refi if you choose to, even when you have a 30-year fixed. But if you're forced into it, you don't know the dynamics of the market at that time. Control what you control for as long as you can control it, especially since you're not even giving them back the money that you started with.
I think the coolest part, click on the little sandwich button, scroll down, you can see your members, all the events, but the mini master classes, that's what's going to set this apart, along with the master classes that are coming. But now you can click on the mini master class that you like. It's broken down into sections. You've got the process here. You can scroll down, watch the video if you want. They're not very long. They're about 5 minutes each. And you can go and click on the PDF, and there you have all the notes for that specific mini master class. To me,
hey everybody, LCA. Today I got Aaron Chapman on here. It's going to be an amazing. I'm a recovering mortgage guy. My first 15 years I was on the mortgage side, my last 15 in real estate. So I can't wait to pick Aaron's brain about what's going on with inflation and rising interest rate. But Aaron, I won't do justice by introducing you. So I'd like for you to introduce yourself to our LCA audience, okay? I read your bio, looks pretty amazing, pretty cool right now. Looks like we're finally streaming live on Facebook. So I want to welcome Aaron Chapman. I'm excited to pick his brain today. My first 15 years, I was on the mortgage side, so I'm a recovering mortgage guy. With the inflation and the rising interest rate, I would like for Aaron to actually introduce himself, because if I do it, I'm probably going to mess up. And I read his bio and I'm very impressed. I can't wait to hear.
Well,
So
I appreciate the intro and what seems to be a lot of optimism about what I have to say here. So let's see if that works out well. And like you had said, you started in the industry from the mortgage side of it. And I'd heard years ago, I was at an event, the guy was speaking. He used to be also a mortgage guy. He says, you don't become a loan originator because you want to, it's because you can't do anything else. And it was the truth. When I grew up, I spent my high school years on a cattle ranch. I went from there to Wyoming, worked in the oil fields. I drove truck. I ran heavy equipment. I got an opportunity to work in the mines in northern New Mexico with my dad, which was awesome. We sold the ranch years before, partnership issues, and then we went back to what we knew how to do, which was my family's used to making money with their back. And to me, the mines was the greatest job I ever had. Several hundred feet underground. You're running a handheld drill. You can drill into rock 6 feet, load it with explosives, step around the corner, blow it up, dig it out, do it again. It's amazing. But then they shut down that project, and I had to go back from northern New Mexico to Phoenix, where my wife and infant son were, and I couldn't find a job to save my life. I literally would apply to everything I was qualified for, and I kept getting the response of being overqualified. Now, I don't know if you've ever been through that hell, but it's pretty miserable to keep getting the door shut in your face because you have too many qualifications. You get kind of lost to what you need to do there. And I remember getting to a point where I decided I was just going to try and take any job to put bread on my table. So I accepted, or at least I went and applied for a $10 an hour truck driving job to haul landscape rock out of Phoenix. And they shot me down. But there was no way I wouldn't have gotten that job. So as I drove away from there, wiping tears from my face, I had a coupon for free diapers for my kid. My wife gave me this before I left because we couldn't afford anything at that point. There was no money left. And as I'm driving to the grocery store, my gas light comes on my truck. So I found a grocery store just down the street, had a gas station on the corner, pulled up to that pump, ran my debit card. I got a decline because I was overdrawn. I rifled through my truck looking for some loose change. I found a couple quarters, Then I started walking that parking lot for a couple of hours, and I found enough change to get a couple gallons of gas. From there, I went into the grocery store. I found those diapers that corresponded with the coupon. And then as I'm walking out, I see, and I'm trying to hide from people, right? Because it's kind of embarrassing. The only thing you're carrying, you have to have a coupon for. As I'm walking out, somebody noticed me and he ran me down and he asked me how things were. And I explained the same thing. He said, hey, let's go to dinner. And I'm like, I can't afford dinner. He's like, well, I've got a gift certificate for Red Lobster. I can take you and your wife out. I'd like to share something with you. And that's where he gave me a business card for somebody in the mortgage industry. Well, when I got that card, I cut a foot off of my hair. I shaved. My mom bought me some business-like clothes because I didn't have any of them. And I went and interviewed, and they started me as a telemarketer in 1997. So I went from there and just, was doing the refis because interest rates, first you're telemarketing and then you start working the leads. And then the interest rate dropped below 7% for owner occupied. That's a big deal for us to think about right now. And that was just for people that were living in the house. Well, when it dropped below 7%, I was able to replace my income, but I still was, driving truck during the week. And then I was trying to build this business on the weekends, and it took off for me. And it was not been an easy ride. We went through the 2001 issue, went through the crash of 2008, had a partnership go bad in 2015. Right now, I am ranked number 20 in the United States of over 300,000 people in my business for the transactions I close. I work strictly with real estate investors. Last year, I did 1,378 transactions for real estate investors.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So I just go to show, right? It doesn't matter where you start, it's where you're going and where you end up. So take an opportunity and run with it. That's why I'm excited today to talk to you about all of, like you already said, 7% back then, because I was back in the mortgage day during that time, right? That was amazing. We just got really spoiled with the last couple of years in the 2s and the 3s. That's an anomaly. That doesn't happen all the time. 6 to 8% is pretty average for the most part. And now you throw an inflation on there. So everyone is worrying about, how people can afford to buy a home, the affordability index, the buying power, not only for primary residence, but also investment properties. And all of us in the real estate industry and business should definitely learn how to own real estate properties, right? Because that's how you build wealth and you build residual income. So can't wait to hear about that. Anything you want to start with?
Well, let's start with the inflation because that keeps coming up, right? That's a big deal to a lot of people. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a screen for those who are watching. I'll describe it the best I can to those who are listening. So what we have here, and hopefully you see a chart here that's got a couple different, a red line and a blue line. So this comes from ShadowStats, shadowstats.com. I was pointed onto this by the professor of accounting at Kennesaw State University. And what they're doing is they show you the divergence of real inflation versus the CPI. The CPI is what the Fed uses to calculate inflation, the consumer price index. If you go back here on this chart all the way back into the 80s, you'll see where it was about 15% in about 1981. Well, then as inflation got more under control because of what Paul Volcker did as the Fed at that time, we'll get into this in a minute, you start to see that they got inflation more under control. And then they started adjusting how they calculated inflation based upon what things that they will actually track and what they don't. So what they track in that particular index is more things that can be kind of manipulated with monetary policy, if you will. So the Fed, as they keep it low, they show here that you can keep inflation under 5% for the majority of the time since 1982 all the way up until about 2020 is the claim. Right. But when you look at this blue line, this adds back in everything that they do not take into consideration that the average American spends money on. As you can see, inflation has been a lot higher. It's probably been averaging, 8 to 10% since the late 90s. And then you get to where we are today. So today we have the consumer price index that pushes us up to 9.1%. You get the real rate of inflation, we're pushing somewhere close to 18. Now it's important for us to know where we sit in inflation because what we hear, all the talking points are, this is the highest inflation we've had in over 40 years. And that's illustrated right here by this chart. Now, do you remember back when what the interest rates were 40 years ago for people buying houses to live in?
Yeah, I was told like 18%, 16%.
Well, here I got the chart to show you. This is what it was back then. So here we are, between 1979 and about 1982, 83. You were seeing as high as 18%. We were about 15% in 85, and it's kind of trickled its way down. So if we were trying to match, because a lot of times they say inflation is going to affect interest rates, right? Because of what those whole dynamics. Well, if that's the case, the last time we were at this point in inflation, we should have 18, 19% interest rates. We're higher in inflation now than we were back then. The other thing is, what's the federal fund rate? You know that?
A lot higher than it was recently. It's almost zero recently.
So it's now actually 2.5 is what it is. I'm showing you updated as of last month is 1.75. They used to raise it 3/4 this last week. I have not updated the slide yet. So it's 2.5%. So it's important for people to know what that is, because that's what tells you that's what dictates your credit cards, your short-term loans like car loans, things like that. But it's what the Fed uses to try and slow down inflation. Now, let's get into what the federal fund rate was last time we had inflation of this level. This is when Paul Volcker was the Fed president. Again, he had it at 18, 19, and 20% at times. This is an average. He actually had it 20% more than once during that year, during the 1980, I think it was 81 to 82. Several times it pushed up to 20, and they would move it 4 points. So everybody freaked out about the Fed raising it 0.75%. If you go back and look during this period of time, they would move the federal fund rate as much as 4% in one decision. So the reason I get into this is, who really benefits from the home buying public being really caught up in what is the best or what interest rates are, and that they need to have the right interest rate to be able to go out and make an offer on a house? Who do you think benefits the most from that?
The buyers.
The buyers would definitely benefit from that. But in reality, from what we have seen, what I've seen, and guys, this is Aaron Chapman's perspective. Just get this. This is not gospel truth. I didn't get this from some Einstein quote. This is just what I've seen over the years I've been doing this, is it's the banking industry is the one who benefits from people thinking that the interest rate is the most important thing. And let me share why. Have you ever seen an amortization table on a loan, what that looks like over the 30-year loan?
Yes, no fund. You paid no principal for a long time.
Yeah, for about the first 5 years. Have you ever noticed how often people are refinancing their houses?
5 to 7 years, if not 7 to 9 years.
What we've been seeing recently, it's been an averaging between 4 and 5 years is what's been happening. So what I'm showing you here is an actual deal. We changed the names on it, so that way we're not sharing people's names. This is an individual started with a $120,000 loan, right? So he paid for 48 months and then came to us to refinance. I tell him, dude, if you're going to refinance, do it to pull cash out and reinvest it, not just to drop the interest rate. Well, he was insistent. Well, what we have here is he paid $719.46 a month for 48 months. Well, that will equal, if you do the math on it, so let me get a calculator, they can do the math, that's $34,534.08 that he paid over 48 months. But if you look here, he started at 120,000. The balance on his loan 48 months later is only 113,537. He only paid it down by $6,400 and change. 34,000 paid out, balance dropped by 6,400 and change. Who won in that deal? Right?
The
so
bank.
Definitely the bank won in that. So I'm going to fast forward this a couple of screens here. Here's what he ended up with. We end up getting the new payoff on his loan when it's time to pay it off and get the new loan done. Had 114,000 and change in payoff. We had prepaid items of 2,400, closing costs of 2,700. Well, what does a person typically do? They add that on top of the loan. So by the time it's all said and done, 4 years later, he closes on his refinance. He's happy. We tried to talk him out, but he's happy with a $119,833 loan within $167 of where he started. Who's winning in that environment? So if the banking industry can get you to keep refinancing for that lower rate, he basically is in the same spot where he started within $200. And if he does it again every 4 or 5 years, will you see what happens in 20 years? That's why people get so caught up in what is the best interest rate, because they're being conditioned to think that way. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, because for the most part, American lives off monthly payments, right? So they thought they can reduce it by $50 or $75 or $100. They think they're winning, but as you've illustrated, they're actually losing by paying so much money, and then all the equity they're gaining in the depreciation just losing back out to the bank.
Yeah, and they get so wrapped up. And I get it, guys. We're conditioned to think this way. I'm not trying to say you're dumb or whatever, think that interest rates are important, because they are important. It's your payment. But when it comes to the real estate investor, they're not as important as you think, and we'll get into why. But before we get into it, let's take a look at the averages of the interest rates for the last So what am I showing here? Since the 1970s. So I've got this. It's 2,677 lines on a spreadsheet that gives you the average interest rate for the last, I guess however many years that is, since 1971. That's 50 years, basically, 51 years. So if you average the interest rates up until now, from 1971 to 2022, it's 7.76. And that's for people buying houses to live in, right? Now, the only reason interest rates went low was because of quantitative easing starting in 2009, correct? So from 2009 to 2018, there was a quantitative easing process that they started to back off of. Then they started, they saw it was moving too much negative, responding too negatively in the market. So they started trickling it in, and then you saw the pandemic happen. When the pandemic hit, there was $1 trillion put back into mortgage-backed securities from the U.S. Treasury from March 20th to March 30th. Now, looking at the history of the rates, if you just take from the pandemic, from quantitative easing till now, it's an average interest rate of 4.02. If it's just from March 20th of 2022 now, it's an average interest rate of 3.3. If you take those out all together, the average rate before quantitative easing was 9.1. So the reason I point that out is, guys, if we took out all the artificial influence that the Fed had by printing money, by pushing up inflation, by shoving it into the mortgage-backed securities as pools, as well as the treasuries, and bringing rates down artificially, our average rate should be around 9%. But we're seeing a significantly lower rate. What's really amazing to me is how we share that with them, and then I quote them on today's rate. Like, all of a sudden, there's so much more accepting. But if they look at the rate without knowing this data, they're thinking the rates are so high.
Yep. So given that point of reference you brought up, right, how you compare things, the title of this webinar is The Impact of Inflations and Rates on Realtor. So educate us listener here, realtors themselves and their end consumer they service, why it's interest rates and inflation shouldn't matter. You should still buy not only primary resident, but also investment properties because of all the programs available out there, despite the rate and the inflation.
Well, here's where it really starts to get kind of sexy here. So you've got, I was talking about this and theorizing what the real payment is that's being made over 30 years because inflation's eroding the dollar on a podcast. I've been a guest on over 100 business podcasts. And the professor of accounting at Kennesaw State University reached out to me. He said, you need to come speak to my students. Little did he know how off that is, man. I cheated my ass off to get that C in high school, and I left to go to the oil fields. So I'm like, dude, do you know who you're asking to come to speak to accounting students? It was a really, really cool conversation. I went out there, and then they built me a tool to actually run the numbers for you. So here's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you an actual deal, and we're going to run these numbers and show you why this doesn't matter so much. So let's take a look here. So what we have here, and I've ran this up. I'm showing an interest rate of 7%, higher than what we have now, significantly higher than what we have right now. And this was a person buying a house for $147,300 in the state of Tennessee, put down 20%, got a loan amount of $117,840. Now, he was paying $783.99 a month. That means he's going to pay off the balance of the $117,840 loan amount over the 30 years, plus interest of $164,397. Many people will see those two things and think, man, I borrowed $117,000. I'm going to pay $164,000 interest. I want to pay this off as fast as I can. I'm just going to throw you an argument at you. You guys decide for yourself as to why I don't think that's right. So when you put those two together, the principal and the interest, that's $282,000 paid over that 30 years. But you borrowed the money at today's dollar value. And we know with inflation, the dollar's losing value. So as you're paying the lender back, they're actually getting less and less and less. So I ran this tool. If you look right here, I based it off of an 8% inflation. The reason I did that is because we have been above 8% in the real rate of inflation for a very long time. When you take out, you add back in everything that we're spending money on. That being the case, that means every time you make a payment, the dollar that you're giving back to the lender is worth at least 0.666% less than what it was the month before using an 8% factor. When you recalculate every dollar as it leaves your hands to pay back that lender, that $117,840, you don't pay back that $117,840. You definitely don't pay the $164,000 interest. The actual value of all those dollars paid back over 30 years is equal to $106,845.23. You never even paid back what you borrowed. Now, I know that's hard for people to wrap their heads around. And here's one other point that people need to really wrap their heads around. Because of inflation, I work in the investor space. We get to raise rents because of inflation. We're seeing an average rent increasing across the United States of 12%. I'm just using a 3% factor here. 3% per year increasing your rents. The baseline rent started at $1,185. Raising the rent only 3% per year for the next 30 years resulted in $665,000 in total revenue off this place, but you only paid out in value of dollars $106,000. That's why I think that a person should not be so wrapped up in what's going on with the interest rates, but look at the deal and look what's happening in the economy.
Wow. So you just share with us how we actually beat the bank in this scenario, right? Technically, because we're paying them less than what it is worth.
Well, and that's why they're so wrapped up in telling you the interest rates are so important and convince you to refinance every 4 to 5 years. Because look what happens to them if you write them out for 30.
Yep. All right. So let's lead back into, let's say, the primary resident. You know, you got your arms, interest only, maybe assumable. There's some avenue for you to take advantage of the different rate. But let's shift to the investment, because everyone in the real estate industry, professional, should be investing in real estate, right? So you understand the power you just share with everybody. Talk to our audience a little bit about non-QM and maybe DSCR, the debt service coverage ratio loan. My guess is that you guys have those programs, maybe some bank statement. There is a lot of different ways for them to finance their investment property that they don't even know about.
There's a ton of different ways to finance investment property. And the one thing that I'll tell people is one mistake that everybody makes when they start getting into trying to purchase investment real estate is they think that they have to time the market. Well, let me just tell you that it's not about the timing of the market. You can't be a star football player and sit on the bench and watch the game go on and just save your energy to get in that play that's going to be on the highlight reel. You have to be on the field playing. What you need to do is set your baselines and know what those are, and then be willing to move forward when you achieve those baselines looking at transaction. Now, you're talking about all these different types of loans that are out there. There's tons. We can go into the commercial world. We can go into DSCR. I'm not a big fan of ARMs if we can avoid them, just because I like to control, right? And what we just showed you with a 30-year fix is you can control what's going on for the entire 30 years. But when you're forced into a refinance scenario, you have no idea what the outcome is going to be at that time. You can refi if you choose to, even when you have a 30-year fixed. But if you're forced into it, you don't know the dynamics of the market at that time. Control what you control for as long as you can control it, especially since you're not even giving them back the money that you started with. Now, when it comes to these other products, that's something where you definitely need to chat with a professional, understand what you need and why you need it. And then you need to understand what's going on in each specific transaction and how it will be affected by that product. Anything that you can get that's long-term leverage, 30-year loans, is a blessing. Just let me tell you that it's a blessing. Now, if you're looking at a DSCR loan, if you guys are unfamiliar with it, you're not looking at your income. We're looking at the property's ability to cash flow. So that forces you to find a good deal, right? So not only do you need to know how to underwrite your deals, underwrite what is a good deal to buy, but now you get another group underwriting it from a different angle to ensure you're not buying something that's going to put you at risk. Too often people look at the banking industry, or at least the guidelines that we underwrite to, as a hedge to their success. Look at it as another person ensuring your success. Because if we can't approve that property, you don't want that property. Bottom line.
Yeah. So and besides just a financing piece, I'm probably going to take you off on the tangent a little bit. I'm sure you know a lot about this field. Talk to the audience a little bit about cost segregation, why it's also great for investors who able to have some money that they came in or they got it from somewhere and they want to shift their investment to real estate. Well,
that's another well, just in the sense in the tax deduction world alone is another thing you need to calculate into. In fact, we can go into another tangent on calculating the real value of real estate and walk completely away from, cash on cash return model. I think that's actually the model that's the least valuable model in all the process of evaluating your real estate. But but that particular cost segregation, being able to take all that depreciation on the property and lump it down into a shorter period of time and throw that on your tax return to get at least a lot more tax effective result on your returns, to pay less taxes, but apply that towards more real estate. The reason I can't give you the reasons why those are that was built and why that was designed. I personally think it's to keep people that get into the real estate game to stay in the real estate game. Because when you think what happens there is providing more housing for others, providing opportunity for people. It's incentivizing us to create for others. And if there's one thing that the government has is always a big push for housing. Well, if this is a way to be able to incentivize people to provide housing, why not? And we need to be calling that housing providers, not landlords. We are providing something to the marketplace. So talk to your CPA about that, understand that a little bit more, what that does. You're able to take all that depreciation that you'd usually be able to write off over 27.5-year period and push it down to a shorter period, like 5 years. That's a significant amount of deduction for you. But one of the things I like everybody to really focus on when they're buying investment real estate is what they should be doing. You know, they need to be thinking they are the CEO of their real estate investment business. Now, when you're a CEO, I'm gonna get your response here. When you're the CEO, do you go hunt around to find a CFO and a COO and a CIO that's willing to accept minimum wage, or are you looking for the best person to run your business?
The quality.
The quality.
Yep.
And that's what ends up happening. People end up trying to find all these people to work with them on the real estate investment business. They'll take the least amount possible. You're cutting out the quality. Let me just tell you that. And when it comes to buying an investment property, the real baseline of ownership here is if you're buying, let's say, just a single family residence and you put 20% down and you did your job, which is find the right people, then you picked a property that can stay reasonably rented for the entire time you own it. You can raise rents on it. Who's paying off that note?
Your renter.
The renter, right? And you guys do this math on your own. I don't know how much time we have, but take a dollar amount. Let's say it's $80,000. And the renter's going to pay that off over 30 years. If you bought a $100,000 house and you got an $80,000 loan, they're going to pay that off over 30 years. Take 80,000, divide it by 30. You're going to find that averages out to $2,666.67 per year. You divide that into your initial investment of 20,000. You're going to find your 20,000 on average grows by 13.33% every year, because $2,600 is 13% of 20,000. Now, some will say, but wait a minute, you got closing costs. Sure, you have that too. Let's say it's 25 grand. Well, let's say it's 26. There's 26,000 total between down payment and closing costs. With that same pay down of that loan, you're going 10.2% return on your investment. Guys, that's before cash flow. That's before tax benefits. That's before the hedge against inflation that I just showed with you. And if you think that hedge against inflation is important to understand that calculator or the tool that I showed you guys here, I'll give this to you. Here's a QR code. Get your phone out. I'll give you the app to calculate it yourself. So all you got to do is get this QR code. I'm going to ask you to fill out the information. Put your real name, your real email address, your real phone number. Don't give me something wrong, because I'm coming out with better iterations of this. And what you're going to get is you're going to get this particular tool. You're going to see it looks like a gorilla head on there. When you get it, it's called the QJO investment tool. The reason it's called that is because the quit jerking off investment tool. I named it that because people that are worried about rate and trying to find the best cash on cash return are wasting time on things of no value. Those who get it will take advantage of deals while other people are pausing. Now, you're going to be able to go into this part, this calculator. You click on the amortization schedule calculator. You fill out the data. Here we're putting 20% down on a $150,000 house with 7%. You calculate that. You're going to find out your principal and interest payment. This will be broken down, principal and interest. You're going to be able to see the total payments and the loan balance. Here's the cool part of it. You click on the calendar icon in the upper right-hand corner. You can scroll every year for 30 years. We're going to go all the way 30 years in advance, save and close. You'll see all the payments to date, and then what in the actual inflation adjusted payment based on 8% inflation. So, as you can see, it's zero loan balance. Here's the other interesting fact. In 30 years from now, you take $719, because that was the payment on this loan, would be equivalent to buying $65 worth of stuff today. That's how powerful inflation is. You got to use it to your advantage and not be a person who's subject to inflation. So if you didn't get the QR code a second ago, because you're like, do I need this? Here's your QR code again, because there's more to it. There's more calculators on there that I can share with you and guide you through. I just wanted to show you that one for right now. This is my gift to you. I had this created and I give it to those who I work with.
So leave it on for 1 second, Aaron, and
Cool.
let's wrap up with, if you're a real estate professional and are working with, your clients who's look to invest in real estate, what should they be ready for so that they can come to someone like you to get a loan to qualify so they can buy their first investment property or multiple properties?
Well, what they really need to be ready for is what they feel they need to have in the form of a lender partner in the deal. It's not about the rate. It's not about the cost. It's about their objectives. They need to know what their objectives are. Be prepared to get on the phone. Have a deep conversation. It takes me about 40 minutes to have a conversation with a brand new client because I need to take them from a consumer spending money and going into debt to now a business owner who is now going to change their mindset and benefit from investment real estate. So, and then also we need to know what cause people are into, right? I'm what they call a cause capitalist. I'm one of those type of people that find that we can't become wealthy unless we're benefiting somebody else. And I'm gonna share one last thing here before we hang up. I am big into, I don't know if you're familiar with the world of human trafficking that we're dealing with out there. So I have some associates out there and I'm trying to actually find it. I had it up earlier and it's amazing how things change on you when you get off the,
Yeah, I did look at it myself actually when I was looking you up before we had this session. I love it. It's amazing.
Yep. So I am tied in with an outfit called Operation Underground Railroad, and what we do is basically infiltrate human traffickers across the globe and take them down with local law enforcement. And it's getting to be out of hand these nowadays, guys. And so what I have right now is a campaign going where we will donate a certain amount of every transaction we do, and everybody we work with, we look to do the same. So you can go to my website, aaronchapman.com, scroll down to donate. So far, we raised $44,000 from clients and business partners. That's not the money that we have provided from my side. There's high six figures that we've been able to do for myself, my business, and other business owners. I encourage people to check this organization out. There's some stuff going on in this world that it's going to take some special people to get it done. These guys are going to get done. They need the funding to do it.
This is amazing. We'll post on our site too, all this link for them to go to and help donate. Real appreciate your time today, Aaron, and all the knowledge. I mean, it's amazing. I learned a lot myself. Any last departing word for our audience here on why they shouldn't sit on the sideline or have their clients sit there? Because there's so many opportunity here with all of these programs out here to go invest in real estate.
The opportunities are huge. You got to know what you're dealing with. Don't just wander around a parking lot, looking around embarrassed, picking up coins. You need to know where the dollars are. And the only way to find them is have the right person guide you to it. By the grace of God that I have Keith point me towards this industry, but it's not going to be easy, guys. It's not going to be all of a sudden you get a business card, you're going to go kick ass. You're going to give that business card. It's going to be a lot of work. It's 25 years worth of work for me, but it was worth every bit of it if you know what you're doing it for.
Yep. Before we go, Jake, I don't know if we have any question we need to answer from for the panel or not. If not, I'm sure Aaron, you will respond via text on our Facebook page.
Yep, we'll definitely jump in and help everywhere we can.
Really appreciate it, man. I got a place in Arizona. I know you're in Mesa. Next time I'm in town, we'll have to get together and catch up.
Shoot me a text, man. We'll get it rigged up.
All right. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time.
You bet. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.